December 16th, 1985. A black Lincoln Town car pulls up in front of Sparks Steakhouse in Manhattan. Snow drifts quietly onto the sidewalk, but within seconds, the night explodes in chaos. 4 gunmen rush forward, and Paul Castellano, boss of the Gambino crime family, collapses onto the pavement in a hail of bullets. This wasn't just another mob hit. It was the public execution of the most powerful mafia boss in America. But how did a man who never wanted to be boss, who preferred steak dinners and business deals over bloodshed, end up ruling the Gambino family and dying in the most infamous mafia hit of all time? To answer that, we need to go back to the very beginning, to the story of a Don who tried to run the mafia like a corporation and paid for it with his life. Stay with us as we unravel the rise and fall of Paul Castellano, the Don who never wanted the throne. Paul Castellano was born on June 26, 1915, in Brooklyn, New York, into a Sicilian immigrant family. Unlike many of his cousins and childhood friends who embraced the street life, Paul wasn't a natural gangster. He wasn't the kind of guy you'd see brawling in bars or waving a pistol in alleyways. From a young age, Castellano gravitated towards something different: business. He was fascinated by money, markets, and the idea of building wealth without rolling in the mud. By the time he was a teenager, he had dropped out of school and worked in his family's butcher shop. It was here, surrounded by sides of beef and long days of commerce, that Paul realized where his skills lay. Neighbors would later say Paul was always calculating, always thinking ahead, not with fists, but with numbers. But there was no escaping the reality of his family. Castellano's relatives were deeply tied into organized crime, particularly his cousin, Carlo Gambino, who was already climbing the ranks of the mob. Paul Castellano might have dreamed of being a businessman, but in the world he was born into, business and crime were one and the same. Through the 1940s and 50s, Castellano found his niche. He wasn't a soldier who kicked indoors. He was the guy who figured out how to turn a criminal hustle into something that looked legitimate. He built businesses in meat wholesale, construction, and labor unions. If someone wanted a contract, Castellano had the connections. If someone wanted protection, Castellano could guarantee it. And unlike many mobsters who flaunted their money in flashy clubs and cars, Paul wanted more. He wanted status. By the late 1960s, he had built a palatial mansion in Staten Island, which locals nicknamed the White House. It had marble floors, sweeping staircases, and a staff of servants. Castellano would sit at his desk like a CEO, dictating orders and reviewing financial ledgers. He was still very much a gangster, but in his mind, he wasn't just a mob boss. He was a business mogul. And that attitude, the distance between his world and the street soldier's world, would eventually become his greatest weakness. In 1976, the Gambino family's longtime boss, Carlo Gambino, died. Gambino had led with strategy, discretion, and intelligence. Under his reign, the Gambino family had become the most powerful mafia organization in America. Everyone assumed that when Gambino passed, his underboss, the widely respected Agnello Della Croce, would take over. But Gambino shocked everyone. Instead of passing power to his loyal underboss, he handed the throne to Paul Castellano, his cousin. Paul didn't even want it. He liked being rich, secure, and respected, but he wasn't a fighter, and he wasn't loved by the rank and file. Still, he couldn't say no to Carlo Gambino. Suddenly, Paul Castellano was head of the Gambino family, and the resentment was immediate. Soldiers whispered that he was soft, that he was arrogant, that he didn't understand the streets. And worst of all, Della Croce, the man many thought should have been boss, had been publicly snubbed. For a while, Della Croce kept the peace. He told his followers to respect Castellano. But the resentment never disappeared. It just simmered under the surface. As boss, Castellano tried to run the mafia like a corporation. He cracked down hard on drug dealing, ordering that anyone caught trafficking narcotics without permission could face death. He wanted the family to focus on white-collar rackets, labor unions, construction scams, extortion, loan sharking, and gambling. And he lived like an executive. While most mobsters still hung out in smoky social clubs in Brooklyn, Castellano retreated to his Staten Island mansion. He demanded that underlings visit him there, as if they were coming to a corporate boardroom. The problem? To many street guys, Castellano seemed out of touch, a man sitting in a marble palace while they risked prison or death. And the contrast grew sharper with the rise of one man, John Gotti. John Gotti was everything Paul Castellano wasn't. Loud, brash, charismatic, and a street fighter to his core. Where Castellano valued suits, money, and steak dinners, Gotti valued respect, fear, and flash. And he wasn't alone. Many Gambino soldiers, especially Della Croce's men, hated Castellano's distance. They felt he looked down on them, that he didn't share the wealth, that he was more of a businessman than a boss. For years, Della Croce kept Gotti and the other rebels in line. But in December 1985, Agnello Della Croce died. With his death, the last thread holding the family together snapped. At the same time, Castellano made a critical mistake. The FBI had planted listening devices inside his Staten Island mansion. And those tapes didn't just catch business talk. They caught Castellano gossiping about family members, mocking soldiers, and even bragging about his affair with his maid. When those tapes leaked to the mob's inner circles, Castellano's credibility crumbled. Gotti smelled blood. December 16th, 1985. Paul Castellano was scheduled to meet with his new underboss, Thomas Bilotti, at Sparks Steakhouse in Midtown Manhattan. What Castellano didn't know was that John Gotti and his allies had already decided his fate. As Castellano's car pulled up in front of the restaurant, gunmen disguised in trench coats and fur hats stepped forward. Witnesses later recalled hearing a burst of gunfire and watching Castellano collapse onto the snowy pavement. Bilotti was killed instantly as well. Onlookers screamed as blood stained the snow outside the upscale restaurant. The hit was bold, brazen, and shocking, the most public mob execution in American history. And within minutes, John Gotti, who watched from a car nearby, became the new boss of the Gambino family. Paul Castellano's murder was the beginning of John Gotti's reign. For a while, Gotti was celebrated as the Dapper Don, the street hero who toppled the aloof businessman. But Castellano's assassination also marked the end of an era. His death proved that no one was untouchable, not even the boss of the most powerful mafia family in America. And the bitter irony? Castellano had never wanted to be the boss in the first place. He wanted wealth, status, and respectability. But by taking the mantle Gambino gave him, he signed his own death warrant. Today, Paul Castellano is remembered not for his business empire or his strategies, but for the way he died. Sprawled in the snow outside Sparks Steakhouse, betrayed by his own men, and replaced by the man who despised him most. So what do you think? Was Paul Castellano doomed from the start because he never embraced the street life? Or did his own arrogance and detachment seal his fate? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss the next story in our Mafia History series.